Before we start today, this product was provided by Nintendo for review and preview purposes. Just in the interest of full disclosure, I want you guys to know that. So Mario Odyssey is now out. People have been playing it like crazy. I've been playing it all day. So I've spent pretty much the entire day playing Mario Odyssey. I was planning to split the time between this, Assassin's Creed, and Wolfenstein. I know, it sounds crazy, but Mario Odyssey really got me playing it for a while. I was supposed to be putting it down and I couldn't because, well, it's a fun game. I like the Mario games, but I wanted to give you guys just quick impressions of this game. I think at this point, roughly 2/3 of the way through so far because I've been playing it like all day. And that's just the story part. That's not like completing and getting all the moons and everything. I'm nowhere near that. But for the most part, you can get through the story part of the game in not relatively fast timing, but it's not like it's going to take you 30 hours to get through the story part. But I wanted to give you guys a relatively spoiler-free impressions of what I think so far. Now, I probably will do a review going forward as I get everything done, not to completion where I have every single moon, but because that'll take a while, and I'll probably accomplish that in my free time as I go forward here as other games come out, but to the point where I'm very comfortable with it. I've beaten it, and I've checked out some of the worlds. At this point, we all know there are worlds that unlock as you play through, obviously, and there's some that are actually post-game, so there's more to do after the game finishes, which is really cool. I don't know any of the worlds yet, but there are worlds that unlock afterwards, so there is like a game after the game finishes, which is really cool. I like that. So I'm going to give you guys an idea of what I think so far, some things I like, a few things that bothered me, but nothing too major. The big thing you need to take away from this, if you're not going to watch the entire thing, is Mario Odyssey's fun. If you have a Switch, go buy it because it's worth it. Also, any of the footage I show you guys is going to be from the desert level. I recorded most of my time there, and I figure, hey, it's a good level to kind of show off the game, and since we've seen a lot of it already in preview events, it won't spoil much for anyone. Oh, this is a Mario game. It's the only thing that would really be spoiled for you. I need the level designs or anything down the road, maybe puzzles you want to play towards the end of the game, because the story is pretty straightforward. It's nothing groundbreaking. Bowser kidnapped Peach. It's what we've been doing for the past 25, 30 years. So let's talk about the game's biggest strength, and that is the controls. This game controls amazing. Like, it is such a treat to control this game because it runs at 60 frames per second. Rarely does it ever dip down, and if you notice it, that's impressive because I don't really notice it drop in frames. The one place I can notice is when you enter New Donk City, and at times when you spin the camera in New Donk City, yeah, you can see the frame rate drop. But for the most part, in very important parts of the game, when you're platforming around or trying to complete puzzles or controlling certain creatures, the game stays at a steady 60, and I appreciate that because response with the controls is important in a game like this, where one wrong move can send you down, pretty much plummet to your death, essentially. But I will say, death is not really, you don't really get punished much at all. It takes away coins, as we know, and then you start back up. Some people probably like that because there's not a massive, like, go all the way back to the beginning, it's over, you have lives. None of that anymore. Some people might like that. Others might think goes a little too easy on you. I don't really mind either way because I just like playing the game. But yes, the controls are great. It feels so good. 60 frames per second is so fluid. And I really like the feel of this game. It's the best we've ever controlled Mario. I know a lot of the other ones were 30 frames. The 60 frames was a much better choice for them. I'm sure they could have made this 1080p at 30 frames per second. They opted to use 900p with a dynamic scaling method, where it went down to like 810p and 720p. While they kept that 60 frames. So I prefer that. It's much, much better that way. In fact, I wish more games would opt for the higher frame rate rather than the resolution. Since I just talked about resolution, I'm going to jump over to the look of the game. I actually like the art style a lot. There's this weird controversy going around with people where they don't like the cartoon visuals or stuff like that. That's never bothered me. I have no problem with art styles in games like these where they try to do something different and accomplish a different look. And this looks great. It's so colorful, and they use the art style in different ways to kind of paint a different tone for different levels. For example, this is a good example. I don't think it's going to spoil anything because this is something we have seen in the previews. New Donk City, when you first get there, as you've seen in certain trailers and stuff, it's raining, there's lightning everywhere, and it's a very dire situation, and they pretty much paint a picture that way with the atmosphere when you first enter. You go from a very bright level, say like the desert level, just as an example, because the level before it was bright, and then you go to a very different feeling because they take it and they make it very dark. It's raining, lightning, people look really sad. They have this really nice noir kind of shot where it's kind of scaling back and you see Paulina kind of looking at the entire city under siege and everything, and it gives you that feeling of hopelessness. And then here comes Mario, you the player, to save the day. So they do use that art style in different ways to try to I guess pull different feelings from you the player, and they do it pretty well, mostly because I don't think a lot of people realize it, but it is giving you that feeling of we gotta save the day because everyone's pretty much lost hope. So the idea of the game is to collect moons. As you collect moons, you power up your Odyssey machine, and then you go to different worlds. And the whole point is you're chasing Bowser, who has captured Peach, and they're going to have a wedding. They're actually collecting different items for the wedding from these different worlds. So you're going around, you're following them, and you're trying to stop them, and they keep getting away like they usually do, right? You know, Princess is always in another castle, for example. And in this case, you collect a lot of moons, which is something that a lot of people pointed out, and I have that same feeling. Collecting a moon does not feel like you've accomplished much, because you're expected to collect a lot of them. So instead of having like a couple moons per level, much like we did the stars from Mario 64, and it feels like a big accomplishment when you collect one in that world. If you, like, seriously, maybe it's a big accomplishment when you collect like 10 of them. Like, it's so common to find these things, and it's so easy sometimes. Sometimes they're just sitting right out in the open. You just walk up and pick it up, maybe talk to somebody, pick one up. Maybe the one I notice all the time is whenever you walk into the coin shop, you just buy one for 100 coins, and coins are everywhere, so it doesn't feel like you've done much. It feels like you just walked in and just took a moon from them just by pressing A. And that is something I understand. It feels very easy to get through these missions, to get through these worlds. And I think the big reason they're doing this is because they're trying to have this game appeal to all different ages and all different gaming experiences. So people who maybe are really good at this platforming genre won't like that you can do this. But then there are people who don't play games as much as like you and I, and they just want to experience Mario and have some fun, and they want a shallow learning curve. They don't want a steep learning curve where all of us, you're jumping from here to here, and all of a sudden you're jumping over, very narrow platforms with spikes and flames and all this stuff happening just to get one moon. They want to make sure that the people who don't play a lot of games can enter this, collect moons relatively easily, but then the people who do, they make harder to get moons. And trust me, there are some very difficult ones as you get further in the game. And you can choose if you want to get them or not. They're optional. They're for the completionists. They're not for the people who just want to experience the story. Because the experience story, you can do that pretty easily and with relatively low effort for the most part. People have said it's easy, and that's because it's supposed to be. There are much, much harder things to do in the game that are pretty much away from the story. And again, more for people who want that accomplishment. I do think this would have been a great game if they were coming up with an achievement system to give an achievement system to, because to have moons that are very difficult and you get an achievement for that moon would have given people who are doing the completionist stuff more of a reason to go out of their way and get a certain moon, because otherwise it's like this moon here where you have to go through all of this madness to get is worth the same as the moon that's just sitting over here on a hill. Now, the world design is really well done. It introduces you to the different creatures that we know about that you can capture, and there are some pretty cool ones in there. The T-Rex is the one that everybody wanted to capture, and if you watched my stream, you realize he's like in the first 20 minutes of the game, which is great. Anyone who's played it, I probably haven't spoiled that for you, there's a T-Rex in the game, but they don't hide him like far away, like towards the end of the game. That's something they want you to see quickly. I feel like that's something you get, and all of a sudden you're like, this is so cool, I'm controlling a T-Rex. They did that on purpose, definitely to kind of hook you in the beginning, which is fine. And then you start to kind of get into the really the knowns, the ones we know, the Koopas, the Goombas, the centipedes, all this cool stuff that you can capture, and then you use them to accomplish tasks. And that's really what helps make the worlds unique. If it wasn't for the capture mechanic, these worlds would look unique, but they wouldn't really feel unique. The whole point of this game is that there are different creatures that you capture through different things, and they build the worlds around those different things that they can do, which is awesome. It's these level designs are very clever in that way, and I think it really makes you want to play through these worlds completely just to see all the different things you can accomplish with the mechanics these creatures have. I know I'm being vague. I'm doing that on purpose. When I do my review for the game, I will include more spoiler stuff, but I know there's a lot of people who maybe want to experience some of these abilities that you get as you go through on their own, especially because there are some puzzles that you kind of have to figure out and learn on your own. So I don't want to ruin any of that stuff for anyone. Just know the worlds are unique because of the creatures they put in there, and the art style does help, like I said before, with the rain in New Donk City, for example, to paint a picture. But the front and center, the big showpiece is the capture mechanic and the creatures. Now, I want to quickly touch on some stuff that has kind of bothered me a little bit. It's nothing major. I still really like this game. I'm going to keep playing it. It's going to probably have me hooked for a while, but I noticed the camera is like extremely wonky. And, well, Mario 64 had a bad camera. We all know this. It didn't have a good camera. This camera is better, but it still gets caught at times. Things will get in the way, whether it's a platform or the side of a wall or something will just get in the way at times. I noticed this early on in the desert level, for example, when I was controlling bullet bills. There was a part where there were bricks kind of in the way and you blow them up and then you'd run under there, but you had to go get the bullet bill and bring him back under. And there were times where the entire wall would kind of be right in front of the camera and you couldn't really see anything. And I started to notice that as I went through, there were times where the camera would not help you, whether you couldn't spin it or it would position itself in weird places. And it was more of a minor annoyance because I was able to get through it fine. But it was just something to pick out and point at. I also wasn't a big fan of the motion controls. I know it doesn't bother some people. It's a personal preference of mine. I'm not a big motion control person, and I know they designed this game with motion controls in mind because there are certain things, even if I turn motion controls off, you still kind of use it for it. I couldn't really figure out any other way to do it. Like, for example, when you're climbing a pole or using certain abilities with creatures to speed it up, because I was using the Pro Controller the whole time, you actually shake the Pro Controller. Things like your hat being like spun around, you can just rotate the joystick, but it is easier to use with motion controls. And I feel like they did that on purpose because they wanted to showcase some of the motion control stuff with the Joy-Cons. It just wasn't anything for me personally. I'm sure there's some people who like the Joy-Cons, but people like me who just want to use the Pro Controller, we don't want to bother with motions or anything, is a little annoying. But yeah, guys, those are my impressions from the early part of the game. I'm about 2/3 of the way through or so I'll get closer to finishing it. I'll probably have the game, at least the story part, done probably by the end of the weekend, and then I'll work through the post-game and then kind of revisit some of the worlds and do some more completion on it. But for the most part, I'm looking to have a review out sometime during the week, next week. And if there's anything you could take from these impressions, the game is great. It is an awesome Mario. It deserves the reviews it's getting. So if people tell you it doesn't, it does. I mean, it's getting 10 out of 10s and 90s out of 100s. While I'm not a big fan of review scores, I've told you guys that at length. I don't care about review scores. But you know what? I know people grade games on it, and Mario Odyssey is worth a high score. It is a good game. It's worth your money. If you're a Switch owner or you're just looking for a new game because you have all the systems, I would consider Mario Odyssey at the top of your list. So thanks guys for watching. Look for the reviews sometime next week. And if you want a little more discussion on it between a couple people, Spawncast tomorrow night will have a couple of us on there probably talking a lot about Mario Odyssey. So check by then. That's 9 p.m. Eastern Time Saturday night. Thanks guys. I'll see you next time.